The train whistle cut through the still afternoon air as Naomi Everett clutched her 6-month-old daughter tightly to her chest, her heart pounding with desperation and fear. The depot at Silver Creek was nothing more than a small wooden platform with a modest shelter, surrounded by the vast emptiness of the Wyoming Territory in 1878. And as the train pulled away, billowing steam into the cooling October air, Naomi found herself truly alone for the first time since fleeing Denver 3 days ago. "Madam, the last stagecoach left an hour ago," the ticket agent called from his window, preparing to lock up for the evening. "Town's 2 miles north. You best get moving before dark." With that, he closed his shutter with a decisive clack that echoed Naomi's sinking heart. Tears welled in her eyes as she surveyed her belongings: one carpet bag, a small trunk, and baby Charlotte swaddled against the growing chill. The weight of her situation crashed down upon her shoulders. Her husband's death 6 months ago had left her with nothing but debts, and her brother-in-law's subsequent offer of marriage had been nothing short of predatory. She had fled with what little money she could gather, hoping to reach her cousin in Oregon, but her funds had run out faster than expected. The baby began to fuss, her tiny face scrunching up with hunger. Naomi bounced her gently, fighting back tears. "Hush now, Charlotte, it will be all right." The words sounded hollow, even to her own ears. The sun was already beginning its descent behind the distant mountains, painting the sky in deepening shades of orange and purple. She had no choice but to attempt the walk to town, though how she would manage both the baby and her luggage seemed an insurmountable problem. As she bent down to try to gather her belongings, a shadow fell across her. Looking up, she found herself staring at a tall figure silhouetted against the setting sun. Her heart leapt into her throat as the stranger stepped forward. He was a man of perhaps 30, with sun-bronzed skin and eyes the color of a summer sky. His clothes were dusty from the trail-worn denim pants, a faded blue shirt, and a weathered leather vest. The Stetson on his head was pushed back slightly, revealing a shock of sandy brown hair. At his hip rested a holstered Colt revolver, but there was nothing threatening in his stance or expression. "Pardon me, madam," he said, his voice low and gentle, like he was trying not to startle a nervous horse. "Looks like you might be in a bind." Naomi straightened, adjusting Charlotte in her arms. Yes, the last stagecoach has gone and I need to reach town." The man nodded, taking in her situation with a quick, assessing glance. His eyes lingered on the baby, who had ceased crying to stare at the newcomer with wide, curious eyes. "Name's Quinn Gallagher," he said, tipping his hat. "I've got my wagon just over yonder, was heading into town myself." He gestured toward the baby and the luggage at Naomi's feet. "I have 2 hands, let me help." Something in his eyes, a genuine kindness that had become foreign to Naomi in recent months, made her hesitate only briefly before nodding. "Thank you, Mr. Gallagher. I'm Naomi Everett and this is Charlotte." Quinn smiled, a warm expression that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "Pleased to meet you both, Mrs. Everett." He bent and easily lifted her trunk with one arm, grabbing the carpet bag with his free hand. "If you'll follow me, my wagon's just behind the depot." True to his word, a sturdy farm wagon hitched to 2 chestnut mares waited nearby. Quinn stowed her luggage in the back, then extended a hand to help her up onto the bench seat. "Been traveling far?" he asked as he climbed up beside her and took the reins. "From Denver," Naomi replied, adjusting her position to keep Charlotte comfortable. "I'm hoping to reach my cousin in Oregon eventually." Quinn nodded, clicking his tongue to set the horses in motion. "Oregon's quite a journey from here. You planning to stay in Silver Creek long?" I'm not certain," Naomi admitted. "My funds are more limited than I anticipated." He didn't press further, seeming to sense her discomfort. Instead, he pointed to the horizon where the scattered lights of a small town were just becoming visible as twilight deepened. "Silver Creek's not much, but it's decent enough. Got a hotel that's clean, though I can't speak to how fancy it might be." "Clean is all I require," Naomi said softly, wondering how many nights she could afford before her meager savings ran out completely. As they rode in companionable silence, Charlotte began to fuss again, her tiny face turning red with effort. Naomi bounced her gently, murmuring soothing sounds, but the baby's cries grew more insistent. "She's hungry, I expect," Naomi said apologetically. "And I'm afraid her last bottle was hours ago on the train." Quinn glanced at her, no judgment in his expression. "There's a general store in town that should still be open. We can stop there first, get whatever you need for the little one." The kindness in his voice nearly undid her. "That's very thoughtful, Mr. Gallagher, but Quinn," he corrected gently. "And it's no trouble. Babies don't much care for waiting when they're hungry." As they approached the outskirts of Silver Creek, Quinn explained that he owned a small cattle ranch about 5 miles outside of town. "Nothing grand," he said with a self-deprecating smile, "but it's mine. Came out here from Missouri after the war, wanted a fresh start." "You fought in the war?" Naomi asked, curious despite herself. "Union cavalry," Quinn nodded. "Joined up in '63 when I was 18. Saw more than I cared to in those 2 years." His expression grew distant for a moment before he shook it off. "But that's ancient history now." Silver Creek consisted of one main street lined with false-fronted wooden buildings, most already closed for the evening. A few saloons were lit up, piano music and raucous laughter spilling onto the street. Quinn guided the wagon to a stop in front of a 2-story building with Jensen's General Mercantile painted on its window. "Let me see if Mr. Jensen is still about," Quinn said, hopping down from the wagon and tying the reins to a hitching post. He returned moments later with an older man who peered at Naomi with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed spectacles. "Mrs. Everett, this is Olaf Jensen. He's agreed to open up for us." "It's no trouble at all," Mr. Jensen assured her with a smile. "My own children are grown with little ones of their own now. I remember what it's like when they're hungry." Inside the store, Quinn helped Naomi select condensed milk, a new glass bottle, and a few other necessities for Charlotte. When she reached for her purse, Quinn gently waved her away. "Please, allow me." "I couldn't possibly consider it a welcome to Silver Creek," Mr. Jensen interrupted kindly. "First supplies for the little one are on the house." Naomi blinked back tears. "Thank you, your kindness is unexpected." Once outside, Quinn cleared his throat. "There's a decent hotel just down the street, the Silver Creek Inn. Owner's a widow named Mrs. Bishop. She's fair with her rates." Naomi nodded, suddenly overwhelmed by the challenges that lay ahead. How long could she stay before her money ran out? What then? As if reading her thoughts, Quinn spoke again. "Mrs. Everett, I hope you don't find this forward, but my ranch hand and his wife left last month to care for her ailing mother back east. There's a small cabin on my property that's sitting empty." He twisted his hat in his hands. "It's not fancy, but it's clean and weathertight. You'd be welcome to stay there while you figure things out." Naomi stared at him, trying to discern his intentions. There had been too many men with hidden motives in her life recently. "That's very generous, but I couldn't impose." Quinn's eyes held nothing but sincere concern. "It's no imposition. Truth is, I could use some help around the place. My housekeeper, Mrs. Talbot, comes in 3 times a week, but she's getting on in years. If you're handy with cooking or keeping house, maybe we could work out an arrangement. Room and board in exchange for some help." He glanced at Charlotte. "The cabin would give you both some privacy, and there'd be no rush for you to move on until you're ready." The offer was tempting more than tempting. It would give Naomi time to save what little money she had, perhaps earn more. "You don't know anything about me, Mr. Gallagher, Quinn," he reminded her gently. "And I know enough. You're alone with a baby trying to make your way to family. That takes courage." He paused. "Look, stay at the hotel tonight. Think on it. I'll be in town tomorrow at noon, having lunch at Clara's Cafe. You can give me your answer then." After helping her check into the hotel and carrying her luggage to her room, Quinn bid her good night. Alone at last, Naomi fed Charlotte and settled her in a makeshift crib fashioned from a drawer lined with blankets. As the baby drifted off to sleep, Naomi sat by the window, gazing at the stars and pondering the unexpected kindness she had encountered. Quinn Gallagher seemed genuinely decent, but life had taught her to be wary. Still, the prospect of a safe place to stay while she rebuilt her savings was alluring. By the time she climbed into bed, she had already half made up her mind. Morning brought the bustle of a small town coming to life. After a simple breakfast in the hotel dining room, Naomi ventured out with Charlotte to explore Silver Creek. The town was modest but seemed prosperous enough, with a bank, post office, several stores, and a small schoolhouse at the far end of the main street. At the general store, Mr. Jensen's wife, a plump, cheerful woman with silver-streaked hair, cooed over Charlotte and insisted on gifting the baby a small, stuffed calico horse. "Every child in Silver Creek has one of my horses," she explained with a wink. By noon, Naomi had made her decision. She found Quinn waiting at Clara's cafe just as promised. He rose when she entered, tipping his hat and pulling out a chair for her. "Mrs. Everett, I hope you rested well." "Yes, thank you." Naomi settled Charlotte on her lap. "Mr. Gallagher, Quinn, I've been considering your offer, and if it still stands, I would be grateful to accept." Relief and something like pleasure crossed his face. "It absolutely stands. When would you like to move out to the ranch? Today, if that's convenient." "There's little sense in spending more at the hotel," Quinn nodded. "I need to finish some business at the bank and pick up supplies, but I can meet you at the hotel around 3. The rest of the day passed in a blur of activity. Quinn arrived promptly at 3, helped load her belongings into his wagon, and by late afternoon they were traveling along a winding dirt road that led away from town toward the foothills. "It's not much further," Quinn assured her as Charlotte began to fuss. "Just over that rise there." As they crested the hill, Quinn's ranch came into view. It was indeed modest, a main house of hewn logs with a covered porch, a large barn, several corrals, and, set apart about 100 yards from the main house, a small cabin. Beyond the buildings, cattle grazed on the sweeping grasslands that extended toward distant mountains. "It's lovely," Naomi said sincerely. Quinn looked pleased. "Been working this land for 7 years now, started with just 20 head of cattle, up to 150 now." "You've done well for yourself. Getting by," he said with characteristic modesty. "Still a far cry from the big operations, but it's enough." He guided the wagon to the cabin and helped Naomi down. "Let me show you inside before we unload your things." The cabin was simple but, as promised, clean and well maintained. It consisted of one main room with a stone fireplace, a small kitchen area with a cast iron stove, a table with 2 chairs, and a narrow bed. A curtained alcove revealed a smaller second bed that Quinn explained had been used by the ranch hand's young son. "The pump outside brings up good, clean water," he explained. "Outhouse is around back. I'll make sure there's plenty of firewood stacked by your door." He looked around, suddenly seeming uncertain. "Will it be comfortable enough?" Naomi felt a lump in her throat at his concern. "It's perfect, Quinn, thank you." He helped her unload her belongings, then excused himself. "I need to check on the cattle, but Mrs. Talbot left a stew on the stove at the main house. I'll bring some over for your supper in a bit, if that's all right." After he left, Naomi set about making the cabin home. She unpacked their clothes, set up a proper space for Charlotte on the smaller bed, and arranged her few personal items: a photograph of her parents, a small clock that had been a wedding gift, and a well-worn Bible on the mantelpiece. True to his word, Quinn returned an hour later with a covered pot of savory beef stew, a loaf of fresh bread, and a jar of preserves. "Mrs. Talbot makes the best blackberry preserves in the territory," he said with a smile. "She'll be by tomorrow to meet you and explain about the housekeeping." Over the next few days, Naomi settled into a routine. Mrs. Talbot, a brisk, no-nonsense woman in her 60s with surprisingly strong opinions on everything from politics to the proper way to iron a shirt, showed Naomi around the main house and outlined her duties. "Mr. Quinn's a good man, Mrs. Talbot told her as they worked side by side in the kitchen. "Lost his wife, Sarah, 5 years back. Typhoid took her and their baby both." Naomi's hands stilled on the dough she was kneading. "I didn't know." He doesn't speak of it much, but it near broke him. Threw himself into the ranch after that, working from sunup to sundown. The older woman gave Naomi a pointed look. "First time I've seen light in his eyes since." Naomi felt her cheeks warm. "I'm just grateful for his kindness." Mrs. Talbot harumphed. Kindness is his nature. But there's more than kindness in the way he looks at you and that baby. Whether Mrs. Talbot was right or not, Quinn was unfailingly respectful and kept a polite distance, never coming to the cabin unannounced and always treating Naomi with courteous regard. In the evenings, however, he often invited her to join him on the porch of the main house after Charlotte was asleep, and they would talk as the stars emerged in the vast Wyoming sky. Naomi learned that Quinn had grown up on a small farm in Missouri, the middle son of 5 children. His father had died when he was 14, leaving him to help his mother manage the farm. After the war, with his older brothers settled with families of their own and his younger brothers grown enough to help their mother, Quinn had headed west seeking a new beginning. In turn, she told him about her childhood in Boston, her marriage at 19 to Edward Everett, a charming bank clerk whose gambling problem had only emerged after the wedding, and their move to Denver in search of better opportunities that never materialized. She spoke of Edward's sudden death from pneumonia and her brother-in-law's subsequent pressure that had forced her to flee. "He'll not find you here," Quinn assured her one evening after she had confessed her lingering fear of being tracked down. And if he did, he'd find more trouble than he bargained for. As October gave way to November, the weather turned colder. Quinn insisted on chopping extra firewood for the cabin, showing Naomi how to bank the fire properly at night so it wouldn't die out completely. He brought her a thick quilt that had belonged to his mother and added extra insulation around the cabin's windows. Charlotte thrived in the clear mountain air. She learned to sit up on her own, and her first tooth emerged, much to Naomi's relief after several fussy nights. Quinn took a special interest in the baby, carving her small wooden toys and speaking to her as if she understood every word. For her part, Charlotte seemed equally enchanted, her face lighting up whenever Quinn appeared. One crisp morning in late November, as Naomi was hanging laundry to dry, Quinn approached with an expression of barely contained excitement. "I need to ride up to the north pasture to check on a heifer that's due to calve," he said, "but I thought. That is, if you and Charlotte would like to come along, it's a beautiful day for a picnic." The invitation, the first of its kind, sent a flutter through Naomi's chest. "We'd like that very much." Quinn helped her into the saddle of a gentle mare named Daisy, then handed Charlotte up to her. He mounted his own horse, a rangy buckskin gelding, and led them along a winding trail that climbed gently into the foothills. The air was crisp and cold, but the sun shone brightly, and the landscape was painted in the russet and gold hues of late autumn. They found the heifer exactly where Quinn's ranch hand had reported, grazing peacefully with no signs of imminent labor. "False alarm, it seems," Quinn said with a smile, "but it gives us a chance for that picnic." He spread a blanket in a sheltered spot beside a small stream, and they shared the lunch Mrs. Talbot had packed: cold chicken, biscuits, apple slices, and a jar of lemonade. Charlotte crawled happily on the blanket, investigating pine cones and pebbles under their watchful eyes. "She's growing so fast," Quinn observed, gently disentangling the baby's fingers from his watch chain. "Seems like she's changed just in the month you've been here." "Babies do that," Naomi smiled. "Every day there's something new." Quinn was quiet for a moment, watching Charlotte. "I never thought I'd feel this way again," he said finally, his voice soft. "After Sarah and the baby died, I figured that part of me was gone for good." Naomi's heart quickened. "What way is that?" He looked at her then, his blue eyes intent, hopeful, like maybe there's still a chance for a family. Before Naomi could respond, Charlotte chose that moment to pull herself up using Quinn's knee, standing wobbly for a moment before plopping back down with a delighted giggle. They both laughed, the moment of tension broken, yet Naomi felt something had shifted between them. As they rode back to the ranch that afternoon, Quinn told her about the upcoming Thanksgiving gathering at the church in Silver Creek. "The whole town comes together. Everyone brings food to share. There's music, dancing." He glanced at her. "I'd be honored if you and Charlotte would attend with me." "I'd like that," Naomi said, realizing she truly meant it. The day before Thanksgiving brought an unexpected flurry of snow, turning the landscape into a winter wonderland. Naomi woke to find Quinn already clearing a path from her cabin door to the main house, his breath clouding in the frigid air. "Morning," he called, leaning on his shovel. "Thought we might get some snow, but didn't expect this much. Still want to go to the Thanksgiving celebration tomorrow?" "Of course," Naomi said, pulling her shawl tighter around her shoulders as she stood in the doorway. "Charlotte's never seen snow before." Quinn's face lit up with a grin. "Well then, we can't deprive her of her first snow day, can we?" Later that morning, bundled in every warm garment they owned, Naomi brought Charlotte outside to experience the snow. Quinn was waiting, and he showed them how to make tiny snowballs and drew patterns with a stick for Charlotte to marvel at. When the baby began to shiver despite her layers, they retreated to the main house, where Quinn had a roaring fire going and hot chocolate warming on the stove. That evening, as they sat together in the comfortable parlor after Charlotte had been put to bed in the cabin, Quinn seemed unusually pensive. "Is something wrong?" Naomi finally asked, setting aside her mending. Quinn looked up, his expression earnest. "Nothing's wrong. I've just been thinking a lot lately." He hesitated. About the future, Naomi's stomach tightened. Was he about to tell her it was time for her to move on? "When you and Charlotte came into my life, I wasn't looking for anything, really," he continued. "I'd made my peace with being alone. Or thought I had." He stood and moved to stand near her chair. "But now I can't imagine this place without you both in it." Naomi's heart began to pound. "Quinn, please let me finish before I lose my nerve," he said with a small smile. "I know it hasn't been long, and I know you came here just needing a safe place to land for a while. I don't want to pressure you or rush you, but I need you to know that I've fallen in love with you, Naomi, with both of you." Tears sprang to Naomi's eyes. "Oh, Quinn." "You don't have to say anything now," he hurried to add. "I just wanted you to know where I stand. If you need more time, or if you still plan to go to Oregon eventually, I understand. But if there's any chance you might feel the same way, that you might consider making a life here." He knelt beside her chair, taking her hands in his. "I'm asking if you'd give me the chance to court you properly." For a moment, Naomi couldn't speak past the emotion clogging her throat. The past few months had been a whirlwind of change. Yet somehow this man, this kind, gentle man who had taken in two strangers without hesitation, had become essential to her happiness in a way she hadn't thought possible after Edward's betrayals. "Quinn Gallagher," she finally managed, "I don't need to be courted." At his crestfallen expression, she quickly continued, "I already know my heart. I love you too." The joy that transformed his face was like the sun breaking through clouds. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he leaned forward and kissed her a gentle, reverent kiss that promised much more to come. The Thanksgiving celebration the next day was everything Quinn had promised. The church was decorated with autumn leaves and fruits. Tables groaned under the weight of food, and the entire community welcomed Naomi and Charlotte with open arms. When Quinn proudly introduced Naomi as the woman I'm going to marry, the cheers and well wishes were overwhelming. They were married on Christmas Eve in the same church, with Charlotte, now crawling energetically and attempting her first words, serving as their only attendant in Mrs. Talbot's arms. The entire town turned out for the ceremony, and the celebration afterward lasted well into the night. That evening, after the festivities had ended and Charlotte was sleeping soundly in what was now her room in the main house, Quinn carried Naomi across the threshold of their home. "Welcome home, Mrs. Gallagher," he whispered, setting her gently on her feet but keeping his arms around her waist. "I've been home since the moment you said I have two hands, let me help," Naomi replied, reaching up to touch his face. "I just didn't know it then." Quinn's smile was tender as he bent to kiss her. "And I've been waiting for you my whole life, even when I thought I'd lost the chance for this kind of happiness." He gazed into her eyes. "Thank you for bringing love back into my life. Thank you for being there when we needed you most," Naomi murmured against his lips. "For giving us a home and a future." Outside, snow began to fall again, blanketing the ranch in pristine white, while inside, the fire crackled warmly, and two people who had once been strangers began their life together, bound by love that had blossomed from a simple act of kindness at a lonely train depot. 5 years later, the Gallagher ranch had prospered and expanded. The small cabin where Naomi had first stayed now housed Quinn's foreman and his family, while the main house had been enlarged to accommodate the Gallaghers' growing family. Charlotte, now a lively 5-year-old with her mother's dark curls and her adoptive father's blue eyes, had been formally adopted by Quinn shortly after the wedding, and she had been joined by 3 siblings: 4-year-old James, 2-year-old Emma, and 3-month-old Daniel. On the anniversary of the day they had met, Quinn and Naomi still took a picnic to the spot by the stream where they had first acknowledged their feelings. As they watched their children playing, Charlotte teaching James how to skip stones, while Naomi nursed baby Daniel and Quinn kept a watchful eye on toddling Emma, Quinn squeezed his wife's hand. "I still think about that day at the depot," he said softly. "How close I came to not stopping. I'd already finished my business in town and was heading home when I realized I'd forgotten to pick up nails at the hardware store if I hadn't gone back." "But you did," Naomi reminded him, leaning against his shoulder. "You were exactly where we needed you to be." Quinn pressed a kiss to her temple. "And I always will be for as long as I live." In the golden light of the afternoon, surrounded by the family they had built together, they knew it was a promise that would be kept.